Hello. Welcome, everyone. I hope you can see me. I can see a lot of people popping in here. Let me know if you have any technical problems. If anybody can't see me or hear me, we'll spend the first few minutes welcoming people and making sure everything is straightened out here. If you want to go ahead and silence your cell phones in the background, that'll help keep things a little bit quiet. And if people just want to start popping in and letting us know your name and the city and state that you're from, or even the country you're from, if you're not in America, that'll be really helpful and interesting. Folks can see how widely popular, for lack of a better word, IBS is, how common it is, how people all around you everywhere are kind of struggling with the same issues that you are. So please feel free to chime in with where you're calling in from today. That'll be really interesting to see. I myself am in Kent, Washington. I'm just outside of Seattle. And it's been such a beautiful summer here today. I feel very lucky. I know it's been a really hard, brutal summer on so many of you, and I'm sorry you're going through so many struggles with that. Let us know any details on that as well, because that's really the topic of our chat today is summer struggles with IBS. How do you manage them? How do you deal with them? How do you overcome them? And I've always found it a little bit ironic and sort of disheartening that summer can be a bad time for IBS, because personally, that's my favorite time of year. I love the summer. I love summer vacations and the summer light and the long days and evenings. And it's just such a wonderful time of year in so many ways. I love the celebratory food and family get-togethers and picnics and barbecues and all these things, and they're great, but they can actually ironically kind of cause problems for IBS. So that's a contradiction that we're going to try to straighten out today, how you can enjoy your summer, and maybe it's your favorite season as well, and how to overcome the obstacles with IBS that are maybe getting in the way of that. There's a lot of help, a lot of ways to manage that. So don't give up. Summer can still be your favorite time of year, even if you do have IBS. So let's see, I see more people chiming in here. And I'm going to be introducing our host, Will, in a few minutes. He's actually going to be the moderator, and he's going to help me feed questions to people. There we go. Will says hi. And everybody, if you can't hear Will or see Will, let us know as well, because he's going to be kind of running the show in the background here. And for the people who filled out the survey and let us know in advance what your summer struggles are, thank you very much. It's always really helpful to get that information and to see that really the same concerns tend to come up over and over again from people, because even though IBS is different in that everybody is unique, we're all still suffering from the same underlying physical pathology. A lot of us have the same symptoms. And for a lot of us, a lot of the same treatments and strategies and tips and tricks will be really helpful. So the same concerns tend to come up over and over from folks, which is good in that it means the same treatments and strategies can also be helpful for a lot of folks. And I want to share information that will help you along those lines. But I'd also like to hear your stories and suggestions and things that have helped you, because whatever has helped you, it will likely help somebody else as well. And sometimes it's just hearing someone else's stories and their little tips and tricks that can make all the difference for your world and your life. So please feel free to chime in, not just with your questions, but with things that have already helped you, things that have helped you overcome summer struggles, and share that with other folks. Give them some help as well. Let's see, I'm going to make sure that I have a cup of my peppermint tummy tea nearby. So if you want to make sure you've got a cup of your soothing tea as well, get us through the event here. It's probably going to run about 45 minutes. If we need to go longer than that to answer people's questions, we will. But that's a rough timeline. And if people want to start chiming in with their questions and queuing those up, we'll start taking them. I'm probably going to start with one of the most common questions that came up from the survey, which was, what do I do when it's just too hot to eat? A lot of people are talking about how the brutal heat they're dealing with and the heat and humidity of the summer, particularly this summer, is just killing their appetite. They're not hungry. They don't feel like eating. They don't feel like doing anything. They're very tired, kind of wiped out from the heat. Their guts may be already upset without having to eat anything, just from the heat and the humidity alone, which is not your imagination. Heat and humidity do directly affect IBS. They affect the serotonin levels in your gut. And serotonin is a neurotransmitter that is directly implicated in IBS. People think of it as something that's in their brain, but actually about 90% of your body's serotonin is in your gut. So anything that affects your serotonin is definitely going to affect your IBS, probably not for the better in terms of heat and humidity, because that's a stressor. It's a stress factor on your body, and it can absolutely make IBS flare. So if it is just too hot out there to eat, you don't have an appetite, maybe already you're feeling a little queasy from it, how do you get around that? What do you do? I find the easiest thing to do in that situation is to do the best that you can, basically, and to just have an overriding goal here of keeping your gut calm. And the number one rule for that for me is to keep soluble fiber in your gut just a little bit, just snacks and light meals. You don't have to sit down to a large meal when you're feeling hot and tired. But just focus on your plain soluble fiber staples. If that's the only thing that you can get in your gut safely, that's okay. And it can be cold. It doesn't have to be hot food either. So think of things like bananas or cold boiled potatoes without the skin, some white rice, some noodles. You can have cold noodles. You can just make a simple blender smoothie if you really can't even turn anything on in the kitchen. That can be fine. Make some kind of simple veggie dip, whirl everything up in the blender and have it with some toast. So all you have to do is, heat some toast up. You don't even have to turn the oven on for that. But just try to keep small amounts of some kind of soluble fiber staple in your gut throughout the day when you're struggling with the heat. Make sure you're having enough water, fluids, anything that's not caffeinated. Rely on your tummy teas. If you have to drink peppermint or fennel tea all day long, that's okay. If that's what you need to keep your gut calm in the face of a heat wave, that's okay too. Ice cold drinks on an empty stomach can sometimes bother people because they make the muscle contract. But if you're really hot and struggling, it might be a lot more soothing than problematic. So key that to how you're doing. If you need to just stick to cold foods and cold drinks, that's okay. That might be the most refreshing and soothing thing for your gut when you're really in a hot patch, like so many of us have been. And, if you really don't have anything to eat, you don't have the energy to make it, food just doesn't sound good at all, have a dose of your tummy fiber. At the very minimum, it's going to keep soluble fiber in your gut. It's going to keep motility stable. If you just literally can't eat, at least that will keep your gut from getting too empty. When it's too empty, it tends to hyperreact when you do put something in it, because IBS by definition is a dysfunction. It overreacts to things it shouldn't. So if you're really desperate and just literally can't eat anything, just keep your tummy fiber going through your gut 24/7. That will at least keep motility stable, keep IBS from flaring, and then you can worry about getting true meals and snacks back in when things cool off a little and your appetite picks up and you actually feel like eating. It's not really fun to eat when you're not hungry, and the IBS doesn't tend to like that either. So that was a really popular question that came up with our survey. Oh, I see more people joining. Hello, hello.
Hey, Heather.
Oh, hi.
It's me.
I see you.
Your host.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to backtrack just a little bit. Everybody, please post your questions in the chat. But before that, I see we have Gil from Las Vegas joining us. And can everybody else kind of type in your city and state? It'll just help to get the ball rolling and, help us all to get to know each other a little bit. And then after that, we're going to type our questions into the chat. Okay?
Yeah, I'm always amazed from all the different places that people come to the events from and how far flung we get folks dealing with IBS. You're definitely not alone. They're surrounded by people with IBS, your neighbors, your family, your friends, your coworkers, and people all over the world as well. So there's a lot of us out there. I don't feel like it's just you.
Looks like we have Deborah from Rochester, New York. Hi, Deborah. And Tina from Ohio. Where are you at in Ohio, Tina? Can you post that? And we have Jackson from Kent, Washington, and Debbie from right here in Bellevue, right in our hometown.
We got a local?
Yeah, local. And then we have Sharon, St. Catharines near Niagara Falls. Yeah, that's my home state. And Ingalls is from Wisconsin, and Tig is from Vermont. Okay? And if you feel brave enough, turn your camera on. If you haven't watched it here this morning, then keep it off. But be brave. We're all friends here, and we're all trying to get to know each other and support each other.
Okay. Yeah, and do let us know your questions, because the whole point of this event is really supposed to be a Q&A. So things that you haven't been able to get help with, things that you're struggling with, that's really what I want to be able to address today. What are you looking for help to get through the summer with IBS? What are your big problems, your big issues, or your solutions? Share those as well. But anything having to do with summer and IBS and managing that combination for better or worse, that's what we're supposed to be sharing today. So please chime in. Oh, I see questions. I'm still getting used to my view. I think Will is seeing a different view, but I see a question from Gil about COVID,
Yeah.
long COVID.
I see that too.
Yeah, so that's okay. That's not a specifically summer struggle, but that actually is coming up from a number of people. Um, COVID can definitely affect the gut. It affects the gut microbiome. They don't really know long term what that's going to mean for people, but it's actually looking like a lot of the long COVID issues may be more about gut dysfunction than anything else. Even though the immediate impact of COVID may not be on your gut and you recover from it, the long COVID symptoms seem to be a lot of gut focus for a lot of people. And they don't have a lot of answers for that right now. But anything that is an insult to your gut can then directly lead to the development of IBS. If you do something that drastically, traumatically upsets the motility of your gut, and COVID can certainly qualify, you may then recover from that initial insult, but your gut doesn't get back to normal functioning. The enteric nervous system that manages the peristalsis of your gut is now dysfunctional, and things just don't work right. And so COVID is being deemed an insult to the gut for a lot of people that can lead to IBS or long COVID IBS-like symptoms. They haven't really distinguished between the two yet. But so far, it looks like it's the microbiome that is at play beneath all of this. They know that's being implicated more and more in all kinds of disorders, not just gut disorders, but all kinds of health disorders. So one of the ways that you can manage that is to try to increase your healthy gut bacteria. So you can do that with probiotics, which are the little, literally the live bacteria themselves. That is the probiotic. But you can also take prebiotics, which are certain types of soluble fibers that ferment in the gut. There's rapidly fermenting and there's slowly fermenting prebiotics, and you only want slowly fermenting prebiotics with IBS. But those will ferment in the gut. They create an environment of short chain fatty acids in which the healthy bacteria, the probiotics, then thrive. And the good bacteria eat bad bacteria and keep things in check. So if you are dealing with something like long COVID symptoms or even just IBS in general, the same rules are still going to apply. It's always a good idea to try to add in probiotics, see how you do. Give them at least 3 months to colonize your gut so you have a fair chance. Watch out for the added ingredients because it's not so much the specific strains of bacteria and types of probiotics that could cause problems for people, but sometimes there's kind of garbage ingredients added to the probiotics. So you really want to watch out for that. You don't want anything else in there. You particularly don't want any of the rapidly fermenting prebiotics. So things like inulin, FOS, GOS, XOS, galacto-oligosaccharides, any form of oligosaccharides, a chicory extract, an artichoke extract. These are all kind of the same thing. They're basically manufacturing byproducts from foods that they're using as cheap prebiotics, but because they ferment rapidly in the gut, also known as FODMAPs, which you might have heard of, they can cause extreme bloating and gas. So you really don't want a rapidly fermenting prebiotic. You want a slowly fermenting prebiotic. That'd be something like your tummy fiber or soluble fiber in foods like bananas or potatoes or rice. You can get it naturally, you can get it supplements, you can do both. But any kind of disruption to your gut microbiome, I would really try to get that back on track with both probiotics and prebiotics. And again, you want to give it at least 3 months to colonize your gut. And for something like long-term COVID, it might be a longer path than that. You might end up doing this 6 months, 12 months, even longer. It's something you could certainly safely do every day for the rest of your life. But so far, that's looking like one of the best approaches to manage those type of symptoms. And I'm keeping a COVID and IBS page on the website as well, where I'm tracking all the research and news that comes out about this. It's just one long running page. So I'm updating that every time they have any kind of new findings in this area. So you can check into that as well and keep current. And there's more news coming up all the time on that.
Hey, Heather. I want to tell everybody we are practicing and learning how to use Zoom and hold these meetings. So this is the second Zoom meeting that we've ever had. And I should have asked Gil the status question publicly and engaged Gil. Okay, so I didn't do that, I'm sorry. So this is what we're gonna do. When you state your questions in the chat, what I like to do is raise your hand, okay? And you can talk to Heather directly. So Gil, raise your hand, and I'm gonna see it. Oh yeah, that's good, but on where the heck is that? Down on the bottom of your taskbar, if you look at reactions and click on that, and then you'll see a raise hand button. There you go. All right, and now I'm going to unmute you so you can talk to Heather directly and see if that answered your question. Okay.
Hi, Gil.
Hi.
Hi, I can hear
Can
you.
you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, no, that did answer my question. You know, I'm on a low histamine diet, so I'm actually eating a lot of sweet potatoes, golden potatoes, purple potatoes. I eat mushrooms. I eat, eggs, just egg whites. And what else do I'm trying, because that's what I said, the histamine, the mast cells are basically crazy. So they just want to produce a lot of histamine. So I'm going to try, the next thing I'm going to try is actually watercress. They recommended watercress, even the tincture to put under the tongue because it's antihistamine. So
Okay.
it's supposed to be really good. But
Okay.
I've noticed the heat, because it's been hot here too. Man, I have not had an appetite.
Yeah.
It's even worse than, because now that the long COVID, I used to have IBS and I'd have problems, but I could get through it. But now it's just been horrible with the heat and humidity. Yeah.
That's hard. I lived for New England or in New England for about 7 years, and it was just really brutal heat and humidity for me. And it was the same thing. I can remember coming home from work and like I know I eat dinner, but boy, I really don't feel like it. I just really don't feel like eating anything.
Yes.
And I mean that it's tough. I would just say make what you eat something that you know is safe.
Okay.
And then cater to what you feel like eating. I can honestly remember some nights where I would have fruit sorbet that I made for dinner, and I thought, well, I made it with a small amount of sugar, and at least I'm getting some fruit that's all blended up and pureed and safe, and it would be like mango, so it's soluble fiber. And that was it. That was the only thing that sounded appealing. It was cold, it was icy, it was a little sweet, and there were some nights where that was dinner.
Mm-hmm.
But it was better than trying to force myself to eat something that wasn't going to set well,
Right.
that wasn't going to peel, that might, set off the IBS. Um, and yeah, sometimes that was it for several days. That was all that kind of appealed to me, unless I got into an air conditioned environment, and then my appetite would kind of perk up if I could do that.
Right.
And lean a little bit more actually in air conditioned restaurants for some of those summers as well, just because it was the only environment in which I really felt hungry and felt like eating and not just queasy from the heat.
Okay.
So yeah, the histamine, that there's some interesting suggestive research that there's a histamine tie-in maybe for IBS folks as well, or at least some of them. They haven't gotten to the bottom of that at all. That may not just be tied to COVID. There's definitely some people, yeah, they notice that anything that sets off the histamine affects their IBS as well. So I've heard from a number of people where they have to do an IBS diet plus a low histamine diet. Not a lot of research, kind of provocative and interesting, but yeah, I'd love to see how they connect all that together. It's certainly going to tie into the microbiome, but how they don't really seem to know. And then the foods that you're relying on, those are good, safe staples. Your
Carrots
potatoes, your
too,
yellow potatoes.
carrots and almond milk and, a lot of just very basic things. But
yeah, and if that's all you feel like eating or all you can get in your gut, that's okay. This might not be the time to worry about having the most appealing dinner or trying to cook something new and being inspired. This might just be like, I got to just stick to staples until this heat wave is over. And it's more of a health focus than a,
And bananas, like you said, bananas. I eat bananas too. So
yeah.
And I do, like you said, I actually eat a banana. If I feel like my stomach's getting a little emptied, I'll eat a banana, just make sure I mash it up while I'm eating, chewing really well. And that seems to help a lot with, the feelings of, the gut getting really angry at me.
Good. Yeah.
I know that if I miss it though, like you said, if I empty my stomach, my gut empties, I have all kinds of problems.
All kinds of problems. Yeah. The emptier your gut gets, the more powerfully it's going to react when you do put something in your stomach. Anything you put in your stomach sets off the gastrocolic reflex. So your stomach signals your brain signals your colon starts contracting, even though it's just food or water in your upper GI in your stomach.
Wow.
So, yeah. So the emptier your gut is, the stronger that reflex will be set off. And also things like fats and insoluble fibrils will set off that reflex more powerfully than anything else. So that's why you're always trying to just keep a little bit of soluble fiber coming into your system, because it's going to keep that reflex calm and stable and keep your motility normal.
Oh,
And,
great.
and even if it's just half a banana when you're, getting too
That's what I
hungry.
do. Just a little half a banana or, quarter banana. And I just get,
Yeah,
you know,
better. It's way better than nothing. It'll at least keep your gut calm, and it's not so much to eat that, you have to kind of chug it down if you don't feel hungry, but it'll keep your system calm until the weather calms down and maybe you have more of an appetite.
Okay.
So yeah, bananas are a good shortcut there. I like cold noodles when I'm hot, or a little cold rice.
Okay.
Fresh fruit smoothies, applesauce can be helpful. Yeah, anything. Well, instant oatmeal, sometimes just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, anything that keeps your gut filled with soluble fiber will keep things calm. And your herbal teas too. Rely on your antispasmodic herbal teas, your peppermint, your fennel, chamomile, ginger. Just about all herbal teas are going to be antispasmodic and keep your gut calm. So that's something too. And you can have them iced. You can brew them hot to extract the volatile oils, get them nice and strong, but you don't have to drink them hot on a hot day. So that can
Okay.
be something you can just sip as well when you really don't feel like putting anything in your stomach, but it's getting too empty. Have half a cup of really strong herbal tea and keep your gut calm. I do that with peppermint all summer long.
Okay.
Okay. Hey,
Great.
Gil, did that kind of
Thank you
cover all
Thank
your?
you so much.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys, the last meeting we had 72 participants. And so we're experimenting with different list size to keep the group small and intimate. This group is much smaller. It's only 20 people. So this is good for us because we can spend more time with each of you. The last time we did this, the meeting went an hour and a half. So don't be afraid to ask questions. We're here for you, okay? Let's see. I see that here. Tina, you posted a question, and I'm wondering if you could raise your hand and I can unmute you, Tina, and you can talk to Heather directly. You want to do that?
I think she says she has no access to microphone. Was that the right Tina?
Oh.
Yeah, she's on desktop.
Okay, no problem. So we'll answer your question, Tina. But the next question will be from Sharon. So Sharon, when Heather's done, just raise your hand. Okay, and then I'll unmute you and then you can talk to Heather and ask her your question directly, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Heather, so we're gonna, Tina's question is starting your tummy fiber 1 teaspoon 2 times a day causes mild bloating and wind? Should those symptoms level out before upping the dose? Can we expect the symptoms to level out at all? She also says, I believe my IBS has re-triggered post-COVID.
Yeah, I believe you too. It probably did get re-triggered post-COVID, like so many other people are having happen. Well, your starting dose would normally be half a teaspoon twice a day. So if you started at 1 teaspoon twice a day, that's twice the normal starting dose. So yes, you could stay there and your gut will adapt and bloating and gas will go away. But it's always better with IBS to not make your gut go through anything at all. You want to be nice to your gut and kind to it and not try to beat it into submission so it fights back. So I would actually drop your dose to half a teaspoon twice a day. And you want to use a measuring teaspoon like you would bake with, not a teaspoon you'd eat with. It's a lot bigger. So half a level teaspoon twice a day, which will not look like much at all because it's really concentrated. If you're prone to bloating and gas, I think it's better to just add the powder right into moist foods with breakfast and dinner instead of having it alone in a standalone, like a big glass of water, which you don't need to do. And that seems in and of itself likely to set off bloating to the people who are prone to that. Just a big glass of liquid can set off the bloating. So you don't need to do that. Just add the powder right into breakfast and dinner and stay at that half a teaspoon twice a day for a good 3 or 4 days. You shouldn't get any bloating or gas at all. If you have any, you can give it a few extra days, or you could start with a 1/4 teaspoon twice a day. But normally the half a teaspoon twice a day, that is quite a low starting dose. That shouldn't cause any bloating and gas. But you still want to get your gut used to fiber increases gradually. All fibers by definition are indigestible. They're all parts of plant cellular walls. So you're not going to digest them. They're just inert substances. So you want to give your gut, I'd say, 3, 4, even 5 days if you're just starting from scratch. And then you want to have a gradual increase process where you add an extra half a teaspoon to 1 dose every 3 or 4 days. So you just increase your morning dose, give it 3 or 4 days, increase your evening dose, give it 3 or 4 days, and then you're increasing your morning dose again, give it 3 or 4 days. So you're just going to increase 1 dose at a time, and you're going to stair step your dose up, keep them even as you do that. And eventually you'll work up to It may be several teaspoons a day if it's just diarrhea and urgency. Sometimes diarrhea folks get up to 1 to 2 tablespoons a day total. It's not uncommon. If you alternate between diarrhea and constipation, you'll probably work up to maybe 3 tablespoons a day ballpark total. And then the constipation folks, I really feel for the constipation folks because it takes a high end of a dose range of soluble fiber to resolve that, which means it takes longer to get to that point. So constipation, if that's your main standalone issue, you're probably going to end up working all the way up to 4 or even 5 tablespoons a day total. That's a huge, huge increase from half a teaspoon twice a day to start with, to go up from 1 teaspoon total per day all the way up to maybe 5 tablespoons a day. That's a hike. You got to think of it as kind of a road that you're walking down. You want to be headed in the right direction. And as long as you're walking down that road, going in the right way, you will eventually get to your destination. You should see improvements along the way. You should see diarrhea resolve. You should see constipation improve and eventually resolve. But it is a process. So you're going to start low, you're going to increase gradually, but you want to keep on gradually increasing until you get to the point along that path where you want to be, where there's no more diarrhea, there's no alternating diarrhea and constipation, there's no standalone constipation. You just finally feel like you are stable and you don't have to think about bowel movements day in, day out. You're just at a normal point where things are just functioning properly. And when you hit that point and you've been there and day in, day out, and you feel like you're staying at that stable point, that's the dose where you want to stay. Whatever that dose ends up being, that's what your gut is telling you is working for it. Then you just want to stay at that dose day in, day out, whatever that end point is. And it will likely be a lot higher for constipation than diarrhea.
Heather?
Yeah.
Let's see, Tina has one more question before we leave her. Do you have thoughts on products used to empty bowels when constipated, such as oxy powder, high-dose magnesium, herbal non-stimulating laxatives, etc., until constipation is resolved?
Yeah, I've thoughts, but they're not happy ones. The good news is that you can gradually work all of these out of your system and work off of them. The bad news is you can't do it overnight. So basically, all of the things you're asking about, they're going to act as kind of harsh stimulant laxatives on your gut, whether they're being technically classified that way or not. Everything from high dose magnesium, milk of magnesia, things like Miralax, X-Lax, Senna, Cascara. They're all really artificial laxatives that are going to disrupt the normal motility of your gut. They're likely to cause spasms, cramps, pain. They may flip you to urgency and diarrhea. Yes, they will help the constipation in the short term because they're going to act as a laxative. And then they're probably going to have rebound issues and other side effects. It's kind of a catch-22 for constipation because you can't just switch from laxatives that your gut has been depending on to a soluble fiber supplement. I wish you could just do that, but it doesn't work that way. So whatever kind of laxatives you've been relying on, keep using them. Use whatever is most tolerable for your gut. If that's the oxy powder, if that's magnesium, if that's Miralax, pick whatever one you have the fewest problems with. Use it at the lowest dose that you need to, at the lowest frequency that you need to, but you probably are going to have to keep that in play as you gradually work up your soluble fiber dose. And you may have to keep it in play for a while. It's not uncommon that the constipation folks, for the tummy fiber, they usually kind of hit a transition around 3 tablespoons a day total. So you may be several weeks, you might be a month or 2 even into the process. You still don't want to then go cold turkey on the laxatives. But when you kind of reach a tipping point where you can tell that now you're getting enough soluble fiber in your gut 24/7, day in, day out, motility is starting to stabilize, which means the laxatives are becoming unnecessary and they're going to start sending you in the other direction. That's actually a good sign. That means your gut is no longer needing that laxative. So you want to start to gradually decrease it while you continue the process of gradually working up your fiber. So it may take, another month or so to make that transition. That's okay. You want to go slow and steady. Again, you're heading in the right direction and you're just kind of tipping a seesaw from one direction to the other, and you're going to keep gradually increasing that fiber. And at the same time, you're going to be gradually decreasing that laxative gradually decrease the dose, gradually decrease the frequency. It's just almost like you're weaning your body off a drug, but you're weaning it off a laxative and getting your bowel to not need its dependency on that anymore. And you can absolutely get there. The longest I've ever heard that it took somebody to get off of laxatives and switch to the tummy fiber was 6 months. And that was someone who had had severe chronic constipation for over 20 years and had been using laxatives every day for pretty much that whole time period. So that's the most extreme example I can give people. And hopefully that's optimistic because you're not likely to be in that extreme situation. But even if you are, it's still optimistic because you can get there. You can eventually get your body off of those drugs and the meds and the laxatives and all of that and get rid of the side effects from them and get it to where it's just relying on the tummy fiber day in, day out to keep motility stable without giving you any side effects. So yeah, keep them in play, but you're going to make a gradual transition off. And if you need that kind of in writing and more details on that, if you email us, we have a whole page on that on literally getting your gut off of laxatives and how to do that process step by step. So you can totally make that transition.
Okay. Let's see, Sharon has her hand up. So I'm going to unmute you, Sharon, or ask you to unmute yourself, okay? Okay, Sharon, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my question was about the wildfires and the air quality that many of us have experienced this last couple of months. I started to have a flare-up, which I was told that I had a stomach flu that may have contributed to the flare-up. But I wondered timing-wise whether it was just coincidental that it was when the very bad air plus humidity, or whether whether that bad air is affecting IBS.
I would say it almost certainly is, because that smoke is a huge stressor on your body, right? It causes all kinds of health problems, really serious health problems. And anything that physically stresses your body can set off IBS. So any other kind of illness, stomach bug, a migraine, you break your leg, you get a cold, anything that's going to physically stress your body like that is quite likely to then set off IBS. And wildfire smoke is horrible for you, obviously causing all kinds of lung problems and breathing problems for people, causing skin problems, anything that's going to do that to your body, then your body is likely to react by having an IBS flare. So yeah, that is not your imagination. And it doesn't even have to be something that directly affects your gut, just any kind of physical stress, which is where heat and humidity comes into it as well. That's stressful on the body to be in a hot, humid environment, can set off IBS. Even happy stress for some people, like they're getting married, they have a big vacation, there's something that they're really excited about, there's a big day coming up, and maybe it's a good day and a happy event, but still that gets your heart rate going, gets your adrenaline going, that physically stresses your body. So even happy kinds of stress, for lack of a better word for it, can trigger IBS. So yeah, that's really common. Best way I know around that is if you know those other stress factors are coming in, crack down on your diet, start doing everything proactively that will help. And just try to keep yourself stable in the first place. Assume that something is going to set you off, and keep yourself stable before you get to that point. It's usually easier with IBS to stay stable than to try to get stable again once something has sent you into a flare. Yeah, and we've had wildfire smoke here too for a couple of days.
Did I answer your questions? Do you have anything else before we move to the next person? I think Colleen's in the line ready to go. Oops.
Yes, I guess the only other part of that was this either air or flu or whatever it was that caused the flare-up has lasted a very long time. And I guess in any of the reading I've done, it said flare-ups usually last a few days or a few weeks. This seems to have lasted a few months. So just wondering whether you have
the IBS flare has lasted a few months?
Yeah.
If it's, so IBS by definition should be chronic but intermittent. So it'll come and go, if you have symptoms that are just nonstop 24/7, not going on day after day, week after week, month after month, that's kind of a red flag for something that's not IBS, and you'd want to check in with a GI doc.
Yeah, well, the family doctor has done a lot of tests, which she says are negative. So I have been referred to a gastroenterologist, but typically it takes several months to get an appointment. So I have an
It
appointment in
does.
October.
Oh,
So,
God. I mean, you could certainly treat it like it's IBS in the meantime, because anything that helps keep your gut calm for IBS will keep your gut calm overall. It won't do anything bad if you've, picked up a bug or there's something else going on.
mhm.
But that's hard because sometimes you can have a flare that might last several months, but it still should kind of come and go. Like you're in a rough patch, but it really shouldn't be day in, day out, over and over and over again with no change to symptoms.
Yeah, I find I'll have a couple, if I have a very limited diet, like 8 items, I think I have on my list that I can eat and without a lot of symptoms. As soon as I start to change and add different foods, I think that seems to be a trigger. And I have a couple of good days, then I get, thinking I'm cured and I start having more and more foods. And then I seem to be bad for a few days. That seems to be what's happening. So it's not going back to the kind of quote normal IBS that I've had for years. So.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where you want to check in with your doc and just see if something else has come up. And if something else has, it's probably making the IBS worse, right? So now you've kind of got two things going on at the same time.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Oh, Sherry.
All right. Colleen, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, it worked.
There you go, Colleen.
Technology.
All right, thank you. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
Hi. So I have IBS cramping almost daily. I know that I have a host of issues, including 5 bouts of diverticulitis and countless antibiotics over the years. I have not had a bout of diverticulitis in 2 years, but that seemed to be the one that did me in, so to speak. So the cramping has intensified since that point. So I was using a lot of peppermint tea and peppermint oils, but now that's causing stomach issues. So I'm wondering if there's something else.
Are you getting like heartburn, reflux kind of issues?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, peppermint. Oh, I love peppermint because it's such a powerful antispasmodic, smooth muscle relaxant, kind of stumbling today, smooth muscle relaxant. And your whole gut is smooth muscle tissue. So you want to relax that and keep it calm. And peppermint excels at that. But because it's your entire gut that's also smooth muscle tissue, if you relax your upper GI, it can relax your esophageal sphincter, and then you get heartburn or reflux. And some people can't do peppermint at all. Some people are fine for a while until, like you, they really start pounding it, and then it's just overwhelming for their system and too much. So I would back off the peppermint. That's not going to be a good fit for you if it's causing any upper GI issues. Fennel is going to be your safety net. That's an antispasmodic. It'll help with cramps, with pain, also with bloating and gas. That kind of tastes like licorice. That also actually will actively help upper GI, like reflux and heartburn. So fennel is a really good safety net for the people who have the lower and the upper GI issues as well. It'll hit all of those without making anything worse. You could also try ginger or chamomile. If you're kind of adventurous, you can really brew just about any herb or spice into a helpful herbal tea. So oregano or caraway or cloves or cardamom. And you can buy herbal teas for that. I would maybe use like 4 or 5 tea bags per cup to make it strong. Or if you have a good source for bulk herbs and spices that you can get like a nice fresh pack of it and just brew a big amount with a large tea strainer. All of the herbs and spices are going to be really antispasmodic, carminative, good for the gut. So you just need to find one that's not going to relax the upper GI the way that peppermint does. And really peppermints and other forms of mint is kind of a loner in that category. Not too many other herbs and spices will have that risk. So I'd start with fennel and see how that helps you, because that should address both problems. And then you can, spiral out into the other herbs and spices as well. And you can also brew all of these things together in the same cup, kind of like an herbal chai, if you will. They're not going to cancel each other out. You're going to get the benefits of all of them, and just find a variety that tastes good to you. So this is something that you want to drink because it's appealing. But that should really help with the pain and the spasms and kind of keep your gut calm and relaxed.
All right, thank you very much.
Hold on, being passed a secret messenger. Oh, yeah. So this is a kind of off the wall trick that I don't have a lot of information to back up, but it was a suggestion that actually started with my husband because he was dealing with GERD and reflux, and we've kind of gotten it out there to some other folks and have gotten really good feedback. So it's worth trying. Can't hurt anything. You always want to go to bed with an empty stomach if you're prone to reflux or heartburn, right? Because going to bed with a full stomach can set that off. And you might want to raise your head at night. So like you're on a wedge or something. But something that people are starting to find can really help with the night reflux and heartburn. Take a dose of your acacia last thing at night before bed in just enough water to dissolve it. So maybe like a quarter to a third of a cup. You're kind of trying to make a concentrated solution here. And then drink that and go to bed. For some reason, that is really helping people head off the night reflux and the night GERD. I'm not quite sure why the soluble fiber is having that effect using it that way, but I'm starting to hear from enough people that this is a really good trick, that something is going on there. And I know for Will, it's actually gotten him off of the Prilosec and the Prevacid, and he had like a GERD cough. So he sort of aspirated the acid into his lungs. And so even though he had this hacking cough with his lungs, the underlying cause was the GERD and the reflux. And they had him on inhalers for that to try to calm that cough. And he's completely gotten off of all of those meds, the inhalers, the Prilosec, the Prevacid, everything that they had him on for this has just disappeared. And his night breathing is completely back to normal. He's not having the reflux and having to wake up and do Tums in the middle of the night. Just by having his dose of tummy fiber concentrated like that last thing at night before he goes to bed on an empty stomach. So it's worth trying. Again, I don't know the mechanisms for why that would help or why that would work, but it seems to be helping people. So that might be worth a shot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
my husband has the same cough, so I'm gonna suggest that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very scary. I mean, really scary to see somebody on
No, it is.
inhalants
They
for
gave
reflux.
him an inhaler. So
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
same thing. And that's another one where like the wildfire smoke, if you're dealing with that, then it just compounds the problem.
Right.
So yeah, let me know if that helps him. I'd love to keep getting feedback on that. I'm really intrigued by that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Heather, if you don't mind, I'd like to add just a tiny bit of context to that.
Yeah, take it away.
I'm Heather. I'm not Heather. I'm Will, Heather's husband, and just developed a horrible case of GERD and desperate. Like wake up in the middle of the night, and I literally thought I was going to choke to death. It was really bad, and so I had this idea to like maybe eat some crackers or something like that to try to put a barrier on top of whatever was in my stomach. So when I went to bed, that would try to protect my sphincter, right? And then Heather, in her brilliance, said, "Why don't you take some acacia?" So what I did exactly is I took 1 level teaspoon and I put it in a third cup of water, and I drank that just before I went to bed. And also, eating too close before I went to bed was really bad. So I have to eat early as possible at night so there's nothing in my stomach. And I'm also sleeping on an inclined pillow. So the things that I read said to lay on your right side. The thing is to kind of lay on your right side first as you go to sleep, because your sphincter and your duodenum will be facing up so that the acid won't be laying against that part of your stomach. So anyway, for whatever that's worth, I hope that helps you. Anyway, it was miraculous. I got off of Prilosec, I got off all this other stuff, and I'm sleeping through the night now.
It was miraculous. I mean, it was super fast. It was within days. You were right as rain. It was
actually instantaneous. In fact, 2 nights ago, I screwed up. I love pizza, and so I had a big pizza, and I worked late that night. I got home late, and I ate the whole thing. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I really screwed up big time. And so I took my acacia, and I survived the night. So anyway, this is an inadvertent plug for Heather's tummy fiber. It was not my intention, but it's a true story.
yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Trying to figure out where we're at. So Debbie has her hands up. Debbie, I'm going to unmute, ask you to unmute, okay?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. In your last Zoom meeting, the subject redundant tortuous colon had come up. I had never heard of that. And I suffer from chronic constipation. I started your fiber in January and have had to go at 1/4 teaspoon, like every 5 to 7 days, very, very slow. And I get the terrible gas, as the other woman was talking about. It never really seems to calm down totally. So I've dealt with that for the last 6 months, and I worked up to 4.5 teaspoons or tablespoons, I'm sorry, in a day, and still not able to get off the Miralax. And I started, after hearing about the redundant tortuous colon, I started thinking maybe I'm more towards that than the IBS-C, because my colonoscopies, the gastroenterologist has told me you're awfully tight and twisted in there,
That's
but has never
torturous.
used the term redundant tortuous colon.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the difference between the two a little bit? And is there a different way of treating that? Because I am still working my way up very,
Okay.
very slowly. The other issue I've had is a recent health issue where I had to go to a liquid diet for a while. So I had to go off the fiber. And I'm wondering how long I'm still off the fiber. How long can I be off? Do I have to start over at a very small dose and work my way up slowly again?
Probably not, since you've been on it for 6 months. And the liquid diet, is it blended foods or is it just like clear like water? teas?
Started clear liquids. I'm now on some blended foods, and I tried adding some fiber in a couple of days ago, and I started getting gastric issues again, pancreatitis issues.
Okay. Take it as slow and steady as you need to, because that's going to be a serious issue. You don't want to make anything flare there. Normally, once you've gotten your gut used to more fiber, it takes a while to lose that tolerance. So if you've been using something for 6 months, a year, even longer, and you're just off of it for a day or, even a week or two, you could probably pick right back up at the dose where you are. You won't lose your tolerance that quickly. But you're dealing with the pancreatitis, so that's a wild card. So listen to your gut on that and go in slow, as steady as you need to, and as you've been doing. I mean, I commend you for your patience and sticking with this, because a quarter teaspoon at a time, that's a long slog. And it is impressive that you've gotten all the way up through that process. And hopefully you've seen improvements as you've gone. I would not actually expect you to resolve at the same dose as the IBS folks. And here's why. A redundant colon, it's something you're born with, and so is a tortuous colon. And usually the people who have that are the people whose parents tell them, you have always been constipated. Like you were constipated as a small child before you remember it, you were born constipated. That's kind of a big indicator that you were actually born with a redundant or a tortuous colon. And really what that means, redundant, just means your colon is too long. So, your colon's like a track. You just have a lot of extra length to your track. But your colon also kind of goes in loops and whirls. And tortuous means it's got too many loops, where the doctor said it was too tight, like hairpin curves on a racetrack. That's a tortuous colon. It's too many loops. They're too tight. Basically, they lead to the same problem, whether it's a redundant colon, it's too long, it's tortuous, it's too twisty and loopy. It's the transit time that's going to be affected. It's just going to take longer for stuff to get through your gut than it would through a normal person's gut, because it's got extra transit time. So if you're running a longer track length, it's going to take you longer to get there, right? The end result of that is constipation, because as food moves through your colon, water is absorbed out. If you have too much extra colon or too much extra time in the colon from the loops and the whirls, too much water is going to absorb out, and you're going to end up with chronic constipation. It's different than IBS in that that's a structural abnormality, and it's kind of surprisingly common. People don't know they have it until they have a colonoscopy. There's really no other way to know until somebody can actually see in there that you have this. But it's not a dysfunctional gut. It's not anything to do with the enteric nervous system. It's not a brain gut disorder like IBS, where structurally people's guts look fine. There's nothing wrong with their colon at all, but it's not functioning properly. The enteric nervous system has gone awry. So that's where people get the constipation from IBS. And a hallmark of IBS, actually a diagnostic criteria for it, is that you have to have lower abdominal pain or discomfort. And it's a spectrum. It can be just kind of discomfort, I don't feel well, all the way up to pain so bad that people black out from it. But it has to have that component. It shouldn't be just standalone chronic constipation. That's my issue. I don't have the pain or spasms. And I think a kind of a big indicating, supporting red flag there, the redundant tortuous colon people seem to be just fine with insoluble fiber. They do okay with a big raw green salad. They do okay with bran and popcorn. the insoluble fiber foods that are really powerful GI stimulants, and they will set off the IBS folks into really severe pain, spasms, cramps, and might flip the constipation to diarrhea. It might kind of make their gut sort of seize up like a Charlie horse, because again, your gut is muscle. If it spasms and it cramps, that can kind of halt motility altogether. And so now insoluble fiber is actually making constipation worse on the IBS side of things. The redundant colon people don't really have that. They don't get the pain and the spasms and the cramps because their gut's functioning properly. It's just too long. It's taking too much transit time. So if it's a redundant or a tortuous colon instead of IBS, you actually have more dietary freedom. So that's good news for you. The bad news is you're probably going to end up on a really high end of your soluble fiber supplement. You might well end up on 6 or 7 tablespoons a day of the tummy fiber, like 30 grams or more is not uncommon for the people who have the redundant colons. If it's IBS constipation, usually 20 to 30 grams of a day of a soluble fiber supplement is where they end up. I think more like 30 to 40 for the redundant tortuous colon people, because you just need so much soluble fiber in your gut 24/7 to force that motility and to regulate water content in the bowel, which you're going to have that issue with if your bowel's too long. You need something to mitigate that. Soluble fiber is the only thing that's going to mitigate that and keep the water content level in your bowel as it needs to be. But if you think it's a redundant tortuous colon and not IBS, if you don't get the pain and the spasms and the cramps, I would experiment with adding in the insoluble fiber foods. You might have a lot more freedom there than the IBS folks. So try having a fruit smoothie that uses a lot of insoluble fiber fruit, things with a lot of skin and seeds and hulls, your roughage kind of fiber. See how you do with that. The more of that you can get in your gut, the more it's going to resolve constipation that's from a structural issue. It's not safe to do for the people with IBS because that could set off the spasms and cramps and make them worse. They have to have insoluble fiber, but carefully. You might not have to be nearly as careful. So 2 different things. Some of the approaches are the same, but a little more freedom, I think, for the redundant colon folks. The bad news is you need a lot more soluble fiber for your supplement, and it'll take you longer to work up to that, which is okay. As long as you're heading down that path in the right direction, you should see improvements as you go. You're just going to keep going past the point where the IBS folks would until you really are stable day in, day out. And that's okay. There's really no max dose established for fiber. So if you need more because of your gut, that's just fine. That's what your gut needs.
Well, your key though there was for me the insoluble fiber issue, because when I eat insoluble fiber, I can't eat it anymore. It gives me terrible gas and problems. So that has helped answer my question.
Okay. And that's interesting. If does it give you pain and spasms at all, like cramping, or does it just give you gas?
I have had some pain in the past, but since using the fennel tea, which I do all day, that has taken care of the pain issue in my lower abdomen.
Okay.
But I still get terrible gassing.
You might be a person too where the microbiome is in play, where people just really everything gives them gas. They can't seem to get away with that. Even things that should be good for their gut and reduce gas still kind of set it off. I think there's growing evidence that there's really issues with the gut bacteria in those cases. And your gut is creating gas or prone to gas from foods that normally wouldn't do that. So you might be someone who wants to play around with getting fermented foods that don't set you off, or probiotics that don't set you off, something that is going to get the bacteria in your gut headed in a good direction. And if you can't do probiotics, sometimes those set off bloating for people. A kombucha is a fermented tea that a lot of people tolerate really well with IBS. It's carbonated, but if you crack the lid and let it stand until it's flat, that'll take the carbonation out, and then you don't have to worry about that. But that can be one of the safest fermented foods for people, and a natural way to get your good bacteria going. And that takes a while. Again, that takes several months to really get your good gut bacteria colonized and thriving. But I think that's really implicated in the people who really have trouble with the gas. They're finding more and more that's a microbiome issue.
Thank you.
Hey, Zara, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hello. So
I can hear you. Go ahead.
okay. I'm wondering about a couple of things. I just sent it in the chat. something that is kind of more summer specific. Seeming like exercising causes flare-ups sometimes in both directions, like constipation, diarrhea. Wondering if you have any tips or ideas for how to manage that. And then separate of that, I don't know how many people here suffer with multiple things. Like I have IBS and I suffer from migraine attacks, and they seem very often to coincide for me, and it can be really difficult to try to manage both.
Yeah.
Any ideas for that?
There is definitely an overlap with migraines and IBS. They have sort of randomly even called IBS a migraine in the gut, which is interesting. So yeah, they're linked. They don't really know how or why, and it's not for everybody. There's lots of people with IBS who don't get migraines and vice versa. But the people who get both definitely notice that one's key to the other, that one can set off the other. Some of that's the stress factor on your body. IBS is stressful. That can set off a migraine. Migraines are stressful to your body. That can set off IBS. But they also do think that there's some kind of link between them beneath it all. I've seen suggestions the vagus nerve maybe ties into that. They don't have a lot of research. But yeah, you're not imagining things. There is definitely a link. I just don't have a ton of information on what that exact link is. It's kind of new that they've tied those things together. But there's definitely something going on in your body that's linking them. And then for exercise, that could go both ways. Anything that's like a really strong, vigorous aerobic activity, jogging, running is kind of notorious for this, gets your adrenaline going. It can actually set off runner's diarrhea, they call it, for people who don't even have IBS. So if you have IBS, it can definitely set you off. So like, you know, the 50-yard dash might not be the best sport for you.
Yeah, I've never done anything like that.
Right? That's not great. But things like swimming, where you can keep your body calm and you're not, you know, it's a good workout, but you're not necessarily working up a sweat in the same way you would vigorously running. Or even better, yoga can actively help reduce IBS symptoms, and that can be a really good workout. So if you're having trouble with IBS setting off symptoms, I would try a different form. Try something that's still a good workout, but not as sort of heart pounding. It could still be strenuous, but yoga is really the best example for that. They actually have clinical research on that helping IBS symptoms. And I personally found that extremely helpful for all kinds of physical things. And you can get a really intense, you know, sweat dripping off of your body kind of a workout, and still have it have a calming effect on the gut instead of setting everything racing. I'd also key it to the time of day. You know, if there's a happy time of day that works for you with exercise, lean towards that, even if it's not what works for other people, or if you need to work out inside in air conditioning instead of outside in the weather, listen to your body on that one. But I really try yoga and see, because that should be actively helpful for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Heather. We're kind of coming up in the top of the hour here. I want to try to encourage other people I see here, Ingalls or Linda, Joy, Zalma, and a few others. You have any questions? This is your chance. Okay, don't be shy. All you have to do is raise your hand, go in the taskbar below. There's a tab that says reactions. Just click on that. You can raise your hand. So if you didn't feel comfortable typing all that into the chat, just raise your hand and we'll bring you on and we'll talk to you, okay? And while we're waiting, anybody that's already asked a question, like Gil, if you have another question, it's always right. So you walk away and then afterwards you're like, oh, I forgot to ask this question, right? It's always after everything's all done. So if you have another question, go for it. And if we don't have any more questions, we're going to try to wrap things up.
Today is listeners. Last event we had talkers and talkers and
Linda
questions.
has
These days,
her
listeners.
hand raised, and then Gil raised his hand. I knew Gil, I knew you were going to raise your hand again. Okay, so we'll take Linda next. Okay, Linda, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Great. I have a question. I was fine. Then I had my gallbladder out. And as soon as I had my gallbladder out, I developed severe constipation. And they haven't been able really to get a good diagnosis. And I want to know if you know of other people that have had their gallbladder out and then developed severe constipation that did not get better. This was 2 years ago that I had it out.
Did you have any IBS issues before that, or you just totally
No,
nothing?
no, I did not have any IBS issues. Only like if I traveled, I might get a little bit constipated. I had great exercise, great diet. I was absolutely fine. And then I've seen a number of GI doctors, and they all say, I've never heard of this. Online, I have found other people that have been in this circumstance, but everybody kept saying most people usually get diarrhea and not constipation. And they seem completely perplexed. It seems totally feasible to me because the gallbladder has so many functions. And so I want to know if you have any suggestions and if you've heard of this, please.
Yes, I have heard of it. And yes, you are right that normally they're going to tell you that having your gallbladder out leads to chronic diarrhea. That's much more common. And that's the bile acid malabsorption issue because your gallbladder stores bile acid. And if your gallbladder is gone, all that bile is just being dumped directly into your small intestines. It's very acidic, obviously. It causes a lot of irritation, it causes motility to speed up, causes chronic diarrhea and urgency. So bile acid malabsorption and chronic diarrhea are really common after people have their gallbladders removed. But anything that is an insult to your gut and abdominal surgery absolutely qualifies, can literally cause IBS. It's a disruption to the enteric nervous system, the normal function of your gut. It's a huge disruption, and you can get over whatever that insult to your gut is, in your case, surgery. So you recover from the abdominal surgery, you get over from having the gallbladder removed, but the enteric nervous system of your gut doesn't recover. It's left dysfunctional, and you're left with IBS. So a lot of people who have abdominal surgery, any kind of violent disruption to their gut, like food poisoning, they end up with IBS. They get over that insult, they recover from the surgery, they get over from the infection or the food poisoning, whatever it was, but now they're left with IBS. And you may well be one of those people where you had an insult from the gut from the surgery, you've recovered from the surgery, but the enteric nervous system of your gut has not recovered, and now it's not functioning properly. Do you have pain and spasms or cramps with it? Is it just standalone constipation with no other symptoms?
I can eat anything I want, anything I want. I do have pain. The pain makes no sense whatsoever. And I am now, after experimenting with 1,000 things, I'm now down to a cap of Miralax, which I hate taking because I never do anything that's unnatural, and then 500 milligrams of mag citrate, that's a powder. But I want to get off of the Miralax, but I bought your fiber, but I have an extraordinarily high fiber diet, and I'm really nervous about taking your fiber, although it sounds like maybe I could try that. My goal basically is just to get off of the Miralax. The magnesium citrate does not bother me taking because my magnesium is low, as most people's magnesiums are low. My magnesium RBC is slightly low. So, but I do not like taking the Miralax. I don't like taking anything that's not natural. And I've tried kiwi, I've tried lemon water, I've tried abdominal massage, I've tried yoga, I've tried 1,000 things that are natural. And my goal is to be able to go back to some kind of normalcy and to get off of the Miralax.
Well, let's see. I have 3 different things for you. The wild card here is the prescription Questran or cholestyramine, which they use for bile acid malabsorption. That they give to people after gallbladder surgery. That I would ask the GI doc about that. Ask them what would happen if you took the cholestyramine. I would be interested to see that, because if there is a bile acid issue and for you it's causing constipation instead of diarrhea, that might be what resolves it. But that would be a medication, but it's specific to the bile acid issue. Another wild card for you might be to see a pelvic floor therapist, because maybe the surgery physically did something to your pelvic floor. Your internal organs are kind of in a pelvic hammock, and surgery can really disrupt that and then cause other types of abdominal issues like the constipation. So a GI doctor should be happy to give you a referral to a pelvic floor therapist. I'd be interested to see what they have to say about this. And then probably the easiest thing to do that might well really help you is go ahead and add in the tummy fiber. It can't hurt. Even on a high fiber diet, if you now have chronic constipation from IBS, you might need a lot more fiber in your gut to get motility back to a stable point. It can't do anything bad for you. It would be really interesting if you worked up your dose on that and it didn't work. That would be a huge red flag for something other than a motility issue and IBS underlying the constipation. Because if it's motility, soluble fiber will regulate that. If it's something else, it won't. It can't hurt you. It can't do anything bad, but it's not going to resolve the problem if there's something else physical going on there. But it should help. I'm not really sure. I mean, you really, to me, you kind of sound like a person who had an insult to the gut from the gallbladder surgery and it led to IBS. And now you have this, the problems from that.
Well, it's incredibly perplexing because it also took away my ability to know when I need to urinate, which is so weird. And it took away my appetite. So something neurologically, even though the neurologist said no, had to have happened, but I don't understand why you would recommend the bile combining drug when that's used for diarrhea.
Well, I'm wondering if, you don't have a gallbladder, so you do have the bile acid that's going right into your intestines, right?
Right.
And if that then it's been an insult to the gut. So the bowel issues you're now having are from IBS, your bowel not functioning properly as a result of this. You have kind of an ongoing insult to your gut with the bile acid. Sometimes with people with IBS, if it's a trigger, their gut kind of contracts and it spasms. And for some people that sets off urgency and really violent, strong spasms and everything goes through way too fast. But for other people on the IBS spectrum, you still have those strong spasms and contractions that's, an insult or a trigger is setting your gut off into. But it can actually really slow down motility or halt it because it literally can be like a Charlie horse in your colon. And so things kind of cramp up and seize up, and now you don't have normal motility. Things are not moving through, and you end up with constipation. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but it can kind of go both ways. If your gut is spasming and not functioning properly, that might tip you into the constipation side of things because motility is kind of seizing up instead of being normal and rhythmic. So if that's being caused by the chronic irritation from the bile acid malabsorption, then something that binds that bile, like the cholestyramine, should help.
Okay, so it wouldn't cause more severe constipation?
I would hope not, but that's why I want you to ask your GI doc about it.
Okay.
Anything having to do with the medications. It's just kind of a wild card to ask them what would happen if you did this. You can also use soluble fiber to bind bile acids. It will do that for you in the gut, but it won't set you off towards constipation or towards diarrhea. It's just a motility regulator, unlike the cholestyramine.
You're talking like popcorn or
no, soluble fiber is going to be like your tummy fiber, or in foods, it's going to be your smushy kind of fibers, the inside of a potato, banana.
Not insoluble fibers, soluble fiber.
Soluble fiber, yeah, that's insoluble fiber is a stimulant, but it should help constipation unless it's IBS constipation, when it might set off spasms and cramps and just kind of make things crazy. Soluble fiber is a bowel motility regulator. So it just regulates peristalsis. It regulates water content in the bowel. It will stop diarrhea. It will stop constipation. It'll stop alternating. Whether you have IBS or not, soluble fiber just regulates motility in the bowel. If you had a normal functioning gut, soluble fiber is just going to keep it stable, normal, healthy functioning. There's no downside to it. If you have IBS and by definition, your gut is not functioning properly, you might need a lot more soluble fiber in your gut to gently force that normal motility that other people just naturally have. So it can't hurt you. But you have a wild card with the constipation following gallbladder surgery, and the neurological issue and the bladder issues as well. That may really tie into something that a pelvic floor therapist could address.
Thank you so much. A wealth of information.
Oh, good. I hope. Follow up with me. Let me know what you find out, Linda, because this is the kind of thing that's really helpful to pass on to other people, where I can say, yeah, you're not the only one who got constipation after they had their gallbladder out. And here's what helps somebody else. So yeah, that's really helpful for everybody.
Okay. Thank you so much, Linda. I'm glad. Aren't you glad I called you out and said, hey, raise your hand?
No.
All right. Gil, you're next.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate, and I've got 3 really quick questions that I'll ask, but I had my gallbladder removed when I'm 58 now, and I had it removed when I was 29. And after I had my gallbladder removed, that's when I started having IBS issues. And so, you know, I never had trouble with digestion until after my gallbladder was removed. And so I completely agree with you. It's an insult to the digestive tract.
It is. It really
So
messes up a lot of people, and they're not told in advance. Oh, hey, here the odds
I
are you're
wouldn't
gonna
have
have
had mine
chronic
removed,
diarrhea.
by the way.
So
Yeah.
many people say that if they'd told them up front. Yeah, my own grandmother got hit with that and ended up on cholestyramine for the rest of her life after like years of suffering with doctors acting like she was crazy until she found out about the bile acid issue. And then you find out it's super common and you're not all alone.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I had a quick comment. I wanted to know your feelings. I've been doing acupuncture for about a year for my gut, and it seems to be I do it once a week because it seems that I need that reset. And
Yeah.
you're talking about the vagus nerve, and you know, it seems to be a really good reset. There's a specific one I do, and I wanted to, you know, 7 Dragons, which actually is a set of acupressure or acupuncture points on meridians, and it really deals with the digestive tract and the vagus nerve. And so that seems to be really a good reset for me. At the end of the week, I go in and I have that done, and I seem to be good for, you know, 3 or 4 days. And then I don't have horrible IBS, but it's enough where it's uncomfortable. You know, I'll have a flare up maybe once a month, something like that, where I have a really bad flare up. The other thing I want to ask you about is about SIBO or SIBO, because the small intestine bacterial infection where you get, you know, in your small intestine. And I'm concerned about that, and I'm wondering if I should get tested for that. And then also, I had an endoscopy done, and they said I have a small hiatal hernia, and that seems to be an issue now that I've got this long COVID. It just seems to be something bother me all the time. I have to press on the, you know, just below the rib on my left side, and it relieves this little, you know, pocket that I have above the I guess above the diaphragm. So those are my 3 things.
Well, acupuncture is fabulous. There's not a ton of research on it for IBS, but what has been done shows that it can help. Feedback from people definitely shows it can help. It can't hurt. It's one of those things where there's no downside. The worst thing is it won't help you, but the best thing is it might really, really help you. So I would use it even if it's not helping you for IBS. If it's helping you for other things, that's taking less stress off your body, that's then, you know, in a sideways kind of manner, going to help IBS as well. So yeah, nothing bad to say about acupuncture at all. The hiatal hernia, you might have to be careful with peppermint with that one. So again, good for the lower GI.
I can't do it.
Yeah, so you're another fennel person, stick to your fennel, your chamomile, your ginger.
Yep.
I forgot your second question.
SIBO, the small intestine.
Yeah. Yes. Anybody should be tested for SIBO before they accept a diagnosis of IBS because they're 2 different things. And a lot of people can have both, but they'll do a breath test for you for SIBO to see if it's a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, cause a lot of bloating and gas for people, can cause diarrhea and constipation as well, can kind of mimic IBS, but it's literally a bacterial overgrowth. It's not a dysfunction of the nervous system of the gut. So they can treat it. There's a special antibiotic, rifaximin, that they use to wipe it out. You're usually on it for quite a lengthy period of time, and it might take multiple rounds. SIBO is kind of hard to get under control. So people maybe end up on this antibiotic, say 3 or 4 times over the course of a year. And then SIBO might still creep back on you, but it's something that they can treat, and ideally they can wipe out as opposed to IBS. So get the breath test before they, you know, tell you have IBS. Make sure it's not SIBO as well, or SIBO on top of it, because that is something that can be treated. And then long term, the things that help both SIBO and IBS are, again, it's like I'm talking about nothing but soluble fiber today, but that's really going to be sort of the magic bullet for both, because if you get a slowly fermenting prebiotic, something like your acacia or your soluble fiber foods, they are going to increase the good bacteria in your gut, and those guys are going to keep the bad guys in check. So that's going to help you overcome SIBO as well as manage the IBS. So the good news is that those kind of things totally overlap with the treatments in terms of managing it yourself. You're only going to have kind of one set of rules there.
Great. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Of course.
This was so informative, and
good.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gil.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Gil.
Thank you.
Let's see, we have one last person with her hand up, Kit. and then we're gonna wrap it up. And while I'm thinking of it, I just want to thank everybody. I don't think anybody out there in the world is doing what we're doing here. So if this is helping you, we love your feedback. Write in, tell us what we're doing right, tell us what we're doing wrong. This is our business. This is what we try to do, is help everybody, okay? All right, Kit, I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna unmute you. All right, Kit, you're up. Kit, down on the left-hand part of your screen, there's a little unmute button. So just look on the bottom left, and all you have to do is click it and you can start talking. Okay. If you're having a problem, text me in the chat, okay? So I can try to help you. In the meantime, what we'll do is we'll do our wrap up, okay, Heather?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody else who has a last quick question, now's your chance to jump in. Otherwise, I would, really want to thank everybody for showing up today. Debbie, got a last question? Got one last one there, Will.
All right, Debbie, go ahead.
I just wanted, there was a comment in the chat, Will, if you could go back maybe and find Tina, where she brought up a question about fermenting and proteins. And I just wondered if Heather could look at that and maybe address that. Do you see that, Will?
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Heather. Tina says, do you endorse any tests for biobacterial, fungal, parasitic infections, fermenting, or putrefying proteins in the gut that can wreak havoc? As I understand it, but not sure how to know for sure or treat those differently.
Well, just like with SIBO, they should really be ruling out anything that is infectious as well as inflammatory with IBS. So they shouldn't be diagnosing you with that without screening you for gut infections, for parasites. They'll normally do a stool sample for that. They're going to check your blood for inflammation. They may do scope work for something structural, but they need to rule out all of that because IBS by definition is nothing infectious or inflammatory or structural. So there's nothing that's going to affect your digestion of things like proteins or cause malabsorption of nutrients. Anything like that is going to point to something that's inflammatory or infectious, something like an inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, or celiac, which is an autoimmune disorder that causes gluten intolerance. That can cause malabsorption. You need things that are going to physically damage the gut in order to have those consequences. And IBS doesn't do that because, again, it's not a disease, it's a dysfunction. So before you accept that diagnosis, they really should be ruling out all of these other things that can cause the same symptoms, but have very different underlying pathologies. So yes, bacterial infections, viral infections, fungal infections, parasites, these may all be things that they are going to have to rule out with blood work, with stool tests, maybe with scope exams before you accept a diagnosis. Some of it's going to depend on your personal history, your family history, your background, how long you've had symptoms, what your life has been, all those kind of mitigating factors. But in general, they need to be able to clearly tell you, yeah, we've ruled out all of these things. Your symptoms fit the Rome-4 criteria is what it's called for diagnosis. And now you are given the formal diagnosis of IBS. So I hope that answered that question. I can't actually see the questions that people are asking, so I hope I got that right. Yeah, and I'm not sure of anything that would make proteins ferment in the gut. That's definitely not going to be IBS.
Hey, Heather.
Yeah.
I did text Kit and to see if she's still there. So anyway, we're just reminding everybody we have a sale going on. We do sale once or twice a year, depending on inventory. So we're going to have Brandon post the sale link in the chat for you. And watch for your emails because the sale ends on Friday. Okay, I hope this helps you. Also, I guess I'm gonna do something new here. I'm gonna unmute everybody so people can just jump in and make comments if you want. Hold on a second. I think I did it right. So anybody, if anybody has any comments, if there's something different we can do, if we can do anything better, or if we're doing anything right. And also, if you are enjoying the products and they're really helping you, posting a TikTok review would really help us. Okay.
Okay.
But I'll just open it up to everybody here and just jump in and say whatever you want. Okay.
I just wanted to thank both of you. This was so informative. I mean, you go to your primary care, you know, and they really don't know how to deal with IBS, or they don't know how to deal with anything that's out of the ordinary, like long COVID.
Yeah.
So talking to you guys has been just huge in terms of the information that I've received today. You know, you don't know which direction to go. You don't know what's causing what. And so today has been really, you know, sort of this pathway to at least test some things. I'm going to get the breath test done because I don't think I had anything before long COVID, after I had COVID and then I got long COVID, but I think there might be a SIBO issue here. So I'm definitely going to get that tested because I didn't have the kind of feeling that I have now with my gut before. I had, like you said, you know, you have good days and bad days, but or even for me, it was good weeks and bad weeks, or maybe, you know, it was very, very extensive. But now there's something else going on, and so I'm curious if it's maybe the SIBO. So
things have changed. Yeah, when things change, that's where you want to follow up with your doc.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Those are my comments.
Good.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Hey, I don't know if I'm saying your name. Lois?
Lois had her hand up.
Did you want to say something, Lois?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can C. difficile be a base cause of IBS? I had C. difficile.
Yeah. Can that be a base cause of IBS? That's the question?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, it can. So C. diff is an infection. For people who don't know it, it's a really nasty infection. C. diff can be really hard to get under control, and you might end up on really scary antibiotics for it, like Cipro. That'll just completely wipe out your entire gut microbiome, basically. So yeah, C. diff in and of itself is a huge, huge insult to the gut. And then the antibiotics they give you to wipe it out can also be an insult to the gut. So yes, I almost want to say it's kind of unusual for people to have severe C. diff and not end up with IBS. Yeah, it's really common. In fact, there's actually something called post-infectious IBS. That's a chunk of people, let's say, who have IBS, where they can point to the insult to the gut that caused it, and it is something infectious. There's been a couple situations in the water, like the water supply in a town has gotten contaminated, and suddenly people's tap water is contaminated with something bacterial, and a lot of people in the town get a gut bacterial infection. They can track the rates of IBS in that area skyrocket afterwards. So yeah, it's really super common. Any kind of insult to the gut can lead to IBS, and C. diff is one of the biggest insults to the gut of all. So yeah,
So I was definitely diagnosed with that and had 2 different goes of the vancomycin treatment for it. And after that, then I guess it was IBS, I would keep having flare-ups. And only after getting in touch with you and reading your book and getting onto the acacia fiber have I been anywhere near back to normal.
Oh, I'm glad.
Since January, or up until January, I think I lost about 12 pounds from IBS flare-ups. And since then, I have gained back 6 of those pounds. I'm eating practically everything. The only thing I'm not back to normal, I use almond milk all the time for my coffee. I don't use the dairy products for that, but I use dairy for everything else. And I certainly thank you for your fiber, for your emails, for the book you've written. I was just to see my pelvic floor therapist today, and she told me that she has referred your book to several of her clients. So I thought that's good.
Well, Well, thank you, Lois. You made my day.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And a bright note for the post-infectious IBS folks, if you can get the IBS under control fast enough after that, you may be one of those people where eventually you kind of don't have it anymore because your gut sort of wants to go in the cycle it's been going in. So if sometimes I hear from the post-infectious people, like right after it's the week after it and they've found us and they're looking for help. And those are the people where if they can get things calmed down and get the symptoms under control and keep them under control, they might never come back. There's kind of a recovery window there for the post-infectious folks. The longer that the IBS goes on, the more that becomes sort of the normal for your gut, the more likely it is to just keep perpetuating. But there's kind of a brighter window, I think, for a lot of the post-infectious folks than the people who have had IBS since childhood or since birth or for decades or something. So you're actually in a pretty good boat. So keep going, sailing in that direction, and things should be really good.
So I am now taking 2 tablespoons twice a day.
Okay.
So I almost feel like maybe I am totally finished with the whole thing, but maybe I should stick with that then? Would you recommend I stay
How
on
long
that
ago did you
fiber?
have C. diff?
About maybe 15 years ago.
Oh gosh, so yeah, okay, so you're a long hauler. I would stick with it. Yeah, there's no
Stick with it.
downside to it. You'll know. I mean, you could come off of it and see what happens, and if it's IBS, things will come back.
Yes, I
Yeah.
don't want to risk it.
Yeah,
I'll stay
but
on
there's
it.
no downside in just keeping if you're stable, I would keep doing what you need to do to stay that way. Keep your gut happy.
This is excellent. Are you going to do this video talk again sometime?
Yes, we're trying to have regularly scheduled live events. So yes, definitely more.
Excellent.
Heather,
Thank you so
I'd love
much.
to jump in here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So we're experimenting. We literally have several 100,000 people in our list. Okay. And it is very hard to go through them 20 people at a time, right? But when you have a lot of people, you can't have these type of meetings. Okay. So what we're kind of doing is we're trying to promote a product once every 6 months or so. And then we're going to specific groups. So if you were a peppermint tea customer, for instance, we'll be doing this hopefully in the future here, maybe in the next month. Okay. I'm thinking that maybe after we go through a few of these lists, we might have like everybody back on, and try to combine more people together that have joined previous meetings. So please write us, okay? help@healthvaribus.com, and just tell us what you think. Would you like more meetings like this? Would you like to be part of a monthly meeting or something like that? We're really trying to invent the wheel here, okay? And your feedback will really help us a lot.
I sure
Yeah.
thank you. And I wish, do you do any meetings with nutritionists and doctors? Because the only way I found out about you was I finally insisted from my GI and my PCP, can I talk to a nutritionist because my diet had gone completely to nothing and was not getting any help from the doctors. I was told it was now about managing my expectations. So I no longer am going to go to that doctor.
Yeah.
But until I saw a nutritionist who pointed me to your website and your products. So you might think, is there some way for you to reach out to doctors and nutritionists around the country and the world to get this information out to them? Because it's needed. I thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Debbie. We do try to do outreach to docs, to the registered dietitians and nutritionists. It's just a time factor how much I can try to focus in that area. We exhibited at Digestive Disease Week once, which is like the gastroenterologist conference, and that was very popular, and a lot of doctors were thrilled to have some place to send their patients. I know we have a number of GI doc offices and RDs who distribute samples and brochures that we send out to them to patients. But yeah, I don't have a better answer than that for that. It's a struggle to get information out and help to people for IBS. It still is 20 years later. It's still really hard to just get basic information out there and help for people. And people talk about it a lot more now than they used to, but I still kind of feel like it's, sort of the sad stepchild of the GI
God
world.
bless you for your efforts.
Well, thank you.
Well, Heather, I'd like I'd like to add, I was reading an article last week and they're talking about doctor's visits and, doctors, especially when they work at clinics and hospitals, they only have 10, 15 minutes to sit down and talk to you. And just having gone through some serious health issues myself, every time I go in, I look at Heather, I'm like, well, what was the point? And they don't have time to sit down with you for a half hour, dig through your history, right? And try to figure things out and everything that's been going on with you, right? And doctors can be really great. If you're in a bad car accident, they can make you into a robot and fix your limbs, right? But when it comes to stuff like this, it takes a lot of research, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of discussion, and they just are not set up to do that, So we're kind of in a delicate position. We want to support doctors, yet at the same time, they just can't have the time with you guys like this, so it's kind of a struggle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it was really great seeing you all. Okay, and please stay in touch. Please email us. We read everybody's email. Heather's unbelievable. She answers everybody. So write in, tell us what to do, tell us what you need, and we'll do it.
Yes. And thank you. I'm gonna add my thanks. It's really great to see names and faces put
Yes, thank you
together.
so
Some
much.
of you I recognize.
Yeah, I've been on the email list for a long time, and this is great. This is really great.
Thanks, Gil.
Yeah.
It's really
Gil.
nice. You guys made my day. I
Yep.
hope everybody got some happy, helpful information here, and not just for IBS summer struggles, but just IBS struggles in general, because they never really end, even though we can get them under control. And I'm glad you liked the live event. We will be doing more of them, hopefully soon. We will let you know, and I hope I see everybody at the next live event. It was lovely to see you guys, and have a wonderful day.